To start off this video, I just want to say I'm so sorry for not posting recently. My parents actually did get COVID, so we haven't really been able to post much. But I hope you're all staying safe during these tough times, so let's get on with this video. Chapter 31 of The Beast of Buckingham Palace by David Walliams, narrated by me. Chapter 31 Disaster Strikes. Standing on one of the turrets of the Tower of London, Alfred looked over to his mother for the next part of the plan. Sadly, she didn't seem to have one. "Run!" she shouted. "But, Mama, I have to save you! Run! Please, run!" The boy looked across the turret. Guards were blocking the way down. What's more, one of them was coming straight for him. Alfred escaped by darting round the back of the cage. "Whack him!" called out his mother. With all his might, he swung the cage forward and smashed straight into the guard. Clonk! Ugh! The guard toppled backwards, knocking over a few more guards as if they were skittles. Bish, bash, bosh! "Ow! Oh! Huh!" "Nice work, young prince," said his mother. The guards scrambled to their feet and were now circling Alfred. "Run, Lionheart, run!" shouted the queen. "Only you can save the kingdom now." "No, I'm not leaving you." With that, the boy leaped onto the back of the cage to make it swing faster. Bash! And it smashed into one of the guards. "4 down, 1 to go," said Alfred. "Don't get cocky," remarked his mother. However, Alfred didn't listen. He began swinging the cage as fast as he could to create more momentum. He arched his back to go faster and faster, and as he did so, disaster struck. Just as it swung off to the side, his hand slipped from the bars of the cage. Ah! Alfred found himself falling into the air, heading straight for the River Thames. Ah! Part 4. Revolution. Chapter 32. Some kind of monster. Splash! Alfred plunged deep into the black water. He had dropped from so high that the force of the fall took him down and down and down into the depths. It was so dark and cold and dirty that he didn't know if he was upside down or the right way up. Gasping for air, he desperately tried to propel himself into the surface to take a breath. But as much as he tried, he couldn't. Instead, Alfred felt himself being swept along by a powerful current. His body was being twisted and turned by the flow of the water. Thud! Alfred's head had bashed into what felt like a brick wall. It must have been one of the legs of the Tower Bridge. As much as he was dazed and confused, he knew that that bridge was the only thing that could save him. The water was pinning him to it. He grabbed onto the bricks with his hands. They were slippery and thick with slime. The boy just managed to haul himself up. He took a breath. He was alive. But not for long. Not if those royal guards shooting him with their laser guns or anything to go by. Zap, zap, zap! The bricks just above his head exploded. Boom, boom, boom! With his feet, Alfred pushed himself away from the wall and swam for his life. The boy was coughing and spluttering, having taken in several mouthfuls of the filthy river water. It was years since any fish had lived in the Thames. It returned to being little more than a giant sewer for the city of London, as it had been hundreds of years ago. Hearing something surging through the water, Alfred turned round to see that the royal barge was giving chase. As fast as the boy could swim, the boat could go faster. There was only one thing for it. Alfred took a deep breath. Then he swam down, down, down into the depths of the Thames until his ears went pop. With his hands, he searched the muddy bottom for something, anything to hold on to. The riverbed was a graveyard of wrecks. Old cars, sunken boats, even train carriages often poked out of the water at low tide. Finding a long piece of metal, he yanked himself down and passed through what felt like a window. On the other side of the opening, Alfred saw there was an air bubble just above him. He took a breath. Feeling his way around, Alfred realized that there were rows and rows of seats. He couldn't believe it. He was on the top of a double-decker bus. One of London's most famous modes of transport, the once bright red bus must have plunged off Tower Bridge many years before. Now it was an underwater hiding place for a prince. The boy took slow, deep breaths, counting in his head. 1, 2, 3. He counted all the way to 200. Only then could he be sure that the guards of the royal barge would have presumed him drowned and moved off. By now the oxygen in the bubble of air was thinning. Alfred took one last breath before pulling himself out of the bus and letting himself float to the surface. Gasp! He was alive. His head bobbing out of the river, Alfred looked all around. There was no sign of the royal barge, and the boy felt safe enough to swim again. However, the freezing cold water was tiring him quickly. He had little energy at the best of times, and this was the worst of times. His arms and legs felt like lead weights, and in seconds he found himself whooshing downriver. The tide was taking him. And if Alfred didn't do something fast, he would be swept all the way out to sea. At speed, he passed through what was left of the Thames barrier. Like giant clogs in the water, it had been designed and built nearly 200 years before to prevent a flood. Many years later, the barrier had been destroyed by one. Now it was little more than a mangled mess of metal, rusting in the water. Alfred tried to cling on to part of it. The tide was so strong it pulled him off. "No!" the boy cried. As Alfred was taken further and further down river, he felt something move past him under the water. It was something fast and silent. At first, he thought it might be a whale or even a shark, but that was impossible. Could it be some kind of monster? Alfred was panicking and kicking his legs as hard as he could to escape from whatever was powering throughout the depths. However, this thing was gaining on him. Whoosh! What's more, it was rising to the surface. Whash! Alfred could feel the water around him being swept aside. Whatever it was right underneath him. And it was rising fast. The boy couldn't bear it and closed his eyes. He was about to be eaten alive. Chapter 33. HMS Scepter. The boy lifted his hand as high into the air as he could. Maybe, just maybe, if he struck this creature hard enough, it might descend into the murky depths forever. Thwack! Ouch! Cried Alfred. The monster was made of metal. As it emerged from the water, Alfred realized it wasn't a monster at all. It was a submarine. He was lying right on top of a submarine. It looked quite like a relic from World War I, a rusty old antique that Alfred was surprised was still operational. On the front of that craft was emballized HMS Scepter. Scepter! That was the code word he'd heard on the radio. Revolutionaries! Near the name was a painted Union Jack. A hatch on the submarine opened, and to Alfred's surprise, an elderly lady popped her head out. She was tall and proud, and dressed in a way that suggested that she was making the best of things. A hat, a string of pearls, and white gloves that had gone grey. "The captain requests you come aboard, your Royal Highness," she announced in a posh voice. Alfred rose to his feet. Soaked to the skin and shivering with cold, he trudged over to the hatch. "Ladies first." "Very kind, but please, after you, Prince Alfred," said the old lady, beckoning for him to make his way down the ladder. For the first time in his life, the prince was standing in a submarine. "Submerge!" barked someone from the shadows, and all at once half a dozen elderly ladies set to work. All Alfred could do was stand still as they bustled around him. Despite their age, and in many cases infirmary, Alfred spotted some hearing aids, a walking frame, and even a wheelchair. In seconds, the submarine was sinking into the depths of the Thames. "My goodness, you must be little Alfred," said the voice. Less of little, please," he replied. "I'm now 12 years old." "I haven't seen you since you were a toddler." Then the owner of the voice stepped into the light, and Alfred recognized her at once. "Granny!" he exclaimed. "The very same," she replied brightly. He held out her arms, and he raced towards her. It felt so good being held by someone who loved him. The king's mother had mysteriously disappeared from Buckingham Palace half a dozen years before. She was dressed in a way old queens often are, all in one colour. Today it was canary yellow, with a matching hat, handbag, and long white gloves. Just like the lady who had welcomed him aboard, her clothes had seen better days. Living on an old, oily, dusty submarine couldn't help. Grammy was a good deal older than Alfred remembered. She was stooped, her skin was pale and wrinkled. though she still had that magical twinkle in her eye that made you fall in love with her in a heartbeat. "You are wet through," she remarked. "I was swimming, Grammy," he replied. "And you used to be such a sickly child." "Well, I never. Still, it's a ruddy, stupid thing to swim in that dirty old river." "I had to escape." "Yes, we've been spying on the Tower of London for some time now. We saw a figure dive from the very top. Must have been you. Extremely brave, I must say." Alfred didn't tell his grandmother that it was not a dive at all, but rather a fall. "Thank you, Grammy," he replied. "What are you doing on board the submarine?" The old queen smiled. "We're waiting for the right moment to strike." "Surely they couldn't be." "Could they?" "Don't tell me that you are the revolutionaries," he spluttered. "Yes, you're looking at them. I know we look like a group of nice old dears ready to judge a cake competition." Alfred did not disagree. "But," the old queen continued, "we are ready for a revolution." All the ladies stood to face the prince and saluted. "Are there any others?" asked the boy. "Of course, we're just one group," continued Grammy. "One group of many." "But you're a member of the royal family," exclaimed the boy. "How could you be a revolutionary too?" "What binds all us revolutionaries together is an idea that this way this once great nation is being run is wrong. There must be a better way, a fairer way. We need a government. We need a police force. We need food and water for everyone, whoever they are. Power can never lie in the hands of just one man, especially if that man is the Lord Protector." "So, how many revolutionaries are there?" asked Alfred. "Impossible to say. The Lord Protector and his goons have done the best to crush all of us. We hid in Knightsbridge Underground Station for many years." "Very handy for looting Harrods," chirped one of the old ladies. "But, like many of the other revolutionaries, we were driven out of our hiding place." "How?" asked Alfred. "The royal guards pumped poison gas down into the tunnels. We were lucky to get out alive. Some of our friends weren't so lucky." The old lady's eyes glinted with tears at the memory. Alfred put his arm around his grandmother to comfort her. "I missed you so much, Granny. I wish you hadn't left the palace," he said softly. "I'm sorry, Alfred, but I had no choice. The Lord Protector accused me of being a traitor, and was only a traitor to him, never to my son, the king. My ladies-in-waiting and I escaped by a bit of a ram raiding." "What?" "We all piled into the old Rolls-Royce and smashed through the palace gates." "Jolly good fun it was, too." "Rather." "Oh, I haven't even introduced you properly," exclaimed Grammy. "You will have seen these ladies bustling around the palace, but you were just a baby. This is Enid." "Good day," shrilled Enid. "Agatha." "A pleasure," said Agatha, performing a curtsy. "Virginia." Virginia did a little wave from her wheelchair. "Daphne." "Charmed to meet you." "Beatrix." "Or Bee, for short." "Judith." "What?" said the old lady. "I'm introducing you." "Pardon?" "Judith is a little deaf." 2:30. Alfred smiled to himself. "So, how did you come to be on this submarine?" "We borrowed the scepter from the Naval Museum. Ancient old thing she is. A little like me," chuckled Alfred. "Now, Alfred, we need you to share with us all the intelligence you have from the palace." The boy was worried he was going to be laughed at. "You are not going to believe this." "These days there is nothing that can surprise me," replied Grammy. Alfred took a deep breath before blurting out, "There is a beast in Buckingham Palace, a griffin, made of fire." There followed a pause long enough to sail a warship through it. "I have to be honest, that one surprised me," replied the old queen. "I knew you wouldn't believe me," protested Alfred. "What do you mean, a griffin made of fire? Griffins are the stuff of myth and legend. They're not real." "No, this one is real, Granny, I promise you. The Lord Protector has used some dark arts to bring a stone statue of a griffin to life. If we don't stop him, the beast will kill every last one of us." The old lady pondered this for a moment. She took out a long, thin white thing from her handbag. "What's that?" asked the boy. "A cigarette." Grammy put the cigarette in an elegant black holder, which she placed between her teeth. Then she found some matches and lit the end. Strike! Instantly, the foul-smelling smoke clouded the air. "What on earth are you doing, Grammy?" spluttered Alfred between coughs. "Smoking." She took a deep, long drag. "Something foolish folk like me used to do in the olden days. Something you must never, ever do." The boy shook his head. Grown-ups were weird. This was a disgusting habit. Next, the old lady brought out a little silver container called a hip flask and took a swig. "What's in there?" asked Alfred. "Gin!" "Yes, I am drinking alcohol. Another thing you must never, ever do." "Anything else while you're at it?" said the boy. The old queen took another drag on her cigarette before enjoying another swig of gin. "Gambling, swearing, cheating at cards, putting 10 sugar lumps in your tea, eating toast in bed, picking your nose, peeing in the bath, blowing off and blaming it on someone else, scratching your bottom in public. All horrible habits that you must promise to never, ever do." Alfred couldn't help but smile when he replied, "I promise, Grammy." "Good boy. Now, if what you say about this beast is true, it is true, then this Lord Protector is more powerful than we've ever imagined." The old queen took the cigarette holder out of her mouth and hollered, "Ladies!" The old dears gathered around their mistress. "We must stop the Lord Protector in his evil plan. We will strike tonight." "Tonight?" sputtered Enid. "Yes, tonight. We will sound the signal for the people of Britain to rise up against the tyranny." 13 bongs of Big Ben," said Alfred. "So you are one of us," replied Grammy. "We will make a revolutionary of you yet. Set sail for the Houses of Parliament." "But, Your Majesty," began Agatha, the rotund lady with the walking stick, "the Houses of Parliament are still under the control of the Royal Guards. The intelligence tells us they have doubled their soldiers there. To break into the bell tower now would be suicide." Grammy took another long drag of her cigarette. "Then, Agatha, I, the old queen, will lead the attack." Silence descended upon the submarine. "Grammy, with respect, you are too old to take on such a dangerous mission," protested Alfred. "You are never too old for adventure," she retorted. There was a hurrah from the ladies on board. "Hurrah!" Looking around, Alfred realized that his grandmother, who must have been around 80-something, was probably the youngest of these revolutionaries. "I'll come too," he announced. "Alfred, with respect, you are too young for such a dangerous mission." The boy thought for a moment before exclaiming, "You are never too young for adventure." There was another hurrah from the crew. This one was much more hesitant than the last. "Hurrah!" "That's my boy," said Grammy, patting her grandson on the head a little too hard for his liking. Pat, pat, pat. "Now, Enid, set a course for Big Ben," announced the old queen. "Aye, aye, Captain," replied Enid, and the submarine surged through the water. Chapter 34. A Carpet of Rats. Alfred was stationed at the periscope as the submarine sneaked its way along the River Thames. Being underwater was the perfect cover for these revolutionaries. On HMS Sceptre, they could move around London undetected. Soon, the submarine has reached the Houses of Parliament. This gargantuan Gothic structure sat right on the River Thames. For hundreds of years, it had been a place where politicians met to debate the important issues of the day. Now, there were no politicians, no elections, no democracy. As a result, the Houses of Parliament were empty and had fallen into total disrepair. The only part of this building that did still function was the clock tower. home of the bell known as Big Ben. This chimed on the hour every hour, telling the people of London the time. Now that it was dark all day and all night, it was hard to tell if 3 chimes meant it's 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning. Still, it was one of the very last symbols of our old order that was still working. If Big Ben still struck on the hour, every hour, it gave the illusion that life was somehow normal. It was important to the Lord Protector, who kept the Houses of Parliament under armed guard at all times. Big Ben in sight, Grammy! Captain, spluttered Alfred. Good work, sailor, replied the old Queen. Now, ladies, there are revolutionaries all over London, all over Britain, awaiting our signal. When Big Ben chimes 13 times, that will send a message for miles around that the moment has finally arrived for revolution. Revolution! Chimed in the old dears together. I will lead a team of 2 ladies, good and true, to the base of the old clock tower. The old Queen unrolled a diagram of the tower. From the intelligence we have gathered, the so-called royal guards are stationed here, and here. With her gloved finger, she indicated a number of places at the base and top of the tower. Our mission is to seize control of the bell tower itself at the stroke of midnight. A moment too soon, and the guards will raise the alarm. A moment too late, and we will have missed our chance. Instead of 12 strikes, we will change the clock's workings to strike 13. Once safely back here in HMS Sceptre, we will be ready to launch the orb. Orb? Asked Alfred. The old Queen winked mischievously and paced over to a huge metal container. She whisked off the cover to reveal an antique torpedo with orb emblazoned on it. Oh my goodness, Grammy! Exclaimed the boy. All of a sudden, he was terrified these old dears might blow themselves up, taking him with them. Beauty, isn't she? Said Grammy, patting the torpedo a little too hard for Albert's liking. This will blow a ruddy great hole in the side of the Tower of London, bring all those innocent folk locked up there. I hope you know what you're doing, Grammy, remarked Alfred. Mamma is one of the prisoners. Of course we do, boy. Just look at my crack team. We are in our prime. Hurrah! Chimed the old ladies together. Their prime looked a while ago, but the prince said nothing. It wouldn't help. Enid, called out the old Queen. Yes, Captain, she replied. You will come with me and my boy, and Agatha. Do I have to? Complained Agatha. Yes. Now, ladies. Alfred gave his grandmother a look. And gentlemen, follow me. The ladies picked up their handbags. What do the old dears need their handbags for? Thought Alfred. Next, Grammy grabbed a rusty old torch, then led the other 3 up the metal ladder and out of the submarine. The 4 of them stood wobbling on the side of the vessel as it gently rocked in the swell of the Thames. Alfred looked up at the great clock tower and took a deep breath. After all the bravado with the old ladies, he was beginning to feel sick with nerves. You tickety-boo, boy? Asked the old Queen. Yes, Captain, ready for action, he lied. He swung a rope with a hook at the end of its back and forth a few times. Then, with all her might, she threw it into the air. Whoosh! The end hooked onto a ledge of the Houses of Parliament. Conk! Granny checked it was secure. Then, looking smug, with all her handiwork, she hissed. Still got it? Now, ladies and gentlemen, follow me. One by one, the 3 old dears used the rope to scale the river wall. Agatha put her walking stick between her teeth like a pirate might have, a cutlass, as she climbed. Alfred went last, and before long the group found themselves inside the deserted chamber of the House of Commons. The prince had seen pictures of this place in his history books. In the old days it was crowded with politicians. Now it had been ransacked. Windows had been smashed, and the distinctive green leather benches had been ripped, and the speaker's chair upturned. When Alfred looked down at the floor, he realized something was very wrong. "The carpet," he whispered. "It's moving." The old queen answered, "Rats." A sea of rats was rolling over the floor, thousands of them. "Let's get out of here," whispered the boy. Grammy checked her little gold watch. "We have 10 minutes until midnight. Move out." She gestured with her hand, and Enid and Agatha, who had been catching their breath, followed on. They passed down hallway after hallway in the Houses of Parliament. Everywhere they stepped, rats scattered. Scratch, scratch, scratch. No one said a word until the old queen walked straight into what she thought was a net. "Help!" she cried. She had become tangled up in something that hung from one side of the wall to the other. It was only when the other three began untangling her that they realized what it was. "A spider's web," said Alfred as he pulled the cobwebs off his mother. "No one has been down here in years," muttered the old queen, brushing a giant spider off her shoulder as if it were a fleck of dandruff. "Onwards!" They pressed on, illuminated only by the rusty old torch she was holding. As they neared a turn in the hallway, she placed her fingers to her lips. "What does that mean?" asked Enid. "Be quiet, dear," replied Agatha. "Shush!" shushed Alfred. "Oh!" exclaimed Enid. "Are we nearly there yet? I need a wee." "Shush!" shushed everyone. Then the old queen flicked the switch on her torch and turned off the light. Click! As slowly and silently as she could, she peered round the corner. Alfred did too. In the distance, shadows could be made out. On closer inspection, these were silhouettes of 2 royal guards. They were guarding the door to the clock tower. The old queen gently rolled her torch along the floor towards them. Clank! Clunk! Clink! The 2 guards stepped towards the torch and peered down to inspect it. The old queen gave the signal, and the 2 old ladies knew exactly what to do. Enid and Agatha charged towards the guards. Charge! They whacked them over their heads with their handbags. Thwack! 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 That's why they needed their handbags. With the guards dazed and confused, Enid and Agatha attempted to wrestle their laser guns off them. In the commotion, blasts of light shot them through their guns, hitting the walls and ceiling. Zap, zap, zap. Boom, boom, boom. Agatha must have been hit. Zap! As she collapsed to the floor in an instant. Thud! The old queen grabbed one of the guards from behind and trained his laser gun on the other. Alfred did the same, and in a glorious moment, the 2 guards zapped each other. Zap, zap! And fell to the floor. Thud! Thud! Immediately, attention turned to Agatha. "Agatha? Agatha!" asked the old queen, as she began slapping the old dear around the face. "Wake up! Wake up! Oh dear, please, you're the only 92. It isn't your time to go. Slap, slap, slap." But, slap as she might, Agatha just wouldn't wake up. Tears welled in the old queen's eyes as she realised the worst. That's the end of this chapter, folks. If you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe, and keep tuned for the next video. Bye!